In the vastness of space, where 1,000 alien civilizations have built the most prestigious military academy in known history, one species was considered the weakest link. Humans, frail, short-lived, emotional creatures who barely qualified for admission through a charity program. They were the cosmic equivalent of participation trophies, included only because the Galactic Council demanded diversity in their elite institutions. For 3 years, Cadet Maya Chun had been the perfect example of human inadequacy. Silent in strategy classes where Zephyrian war minds calculated battle probabilities in nanoseconds. Invisible during combat simulations where Krillian berserkers tore through obstacles with natural weapons that could slice through titanium. Forgettable among the academic elite who possessed telepathic networks, quantum processing abilities, and lifespans measured in millennia. But sometimes the greatest storms begin with the softest whisper. Sometimes the most dangerous weapons are the ones nobody sees coming. And sometimes when the galaxy's most advanced military academy faces its darkest hour, salvation comes not from the strongest, fastest, or smartest cadets, but from the one who learned to fight in the shadows while everyone else was busy looking toward the stars. Maya Chan was about to remind the universe why humanity didn't just survive their climb to the top of Earth's food chain. They had done it while every other predator on their world was bigger, stronger, and better armed. The galaxy was about to learn what persistence hunting meant on a cosmic scale. The morning alarm resonated through the crystalline corridors of Nexus Prime Military Academy with a frequency designed to wake every species in the known galaxy. For the Zephyrians, it triggered their neural awakening protocols. For the Krillians, it activated their combat instincts. For Maya Chun, it just gave her a headache. She rolled out of her narrow bunk in Dormitory Block 7, the section reserved for experimental admissions, a polite term for species the Galactic Council wasn't entirely sure belonged in their prestigious military institution. The human quarters were smaller than those allocated to other species, a practical consideration given that humans were among the physically smallest sentient beings ever accepted into the Academy. Maya pulled on her standard-issue training uniform, the dark blue fabric designed to accommodate the wildly different anatomies of hundreds of species. For her, it hung loose in places where natural armor plating would be, and tight in others where additional limbs might sprout. She had long ago stopped caring about how ridiculous she looked compared to her classmates. The hallway buzzed with activity as cadets from across the galaxy prepared for another day of training. Maya kept her head down and walked quickly toward the mess hall, a strategy that had served her well for 3 years. Don't draw attention. Don't give them reasons to notice how out of place you are. Don't remind them that humans were only here because of diplomatic pressure from the Terran Colonial Alliance. Look who's trying to sneak by again. A voice rumbled behind her. Maya's shoulders tensed, but she didn't turn around. She recognized the voice of Krothos, a Krillian in her tactical studies class. The Krillians were built like 8-foot-tall bears crossed with porcupines, their natural armor making them nearly indestructible in close combat. They were also notorious for their aggressive social hierarchies and their belief that weakness should be culled from any fighting force. "I'm talking to you, meatbag," Krothos continued, using the derogatory term some aliens had coined for humans. 3 years here, and you've never spoken up once in Commander Thax's strategy sessions. What exactly are you contributing to our education? Maya continued walking, her pace steady and controlled. This was nothing new. The Krillians had tested her before, as had members of several other species. Early in her first year, she had made the mistake of trying to engage, attempting to prove herself worthy of being here. That had only made things worse. "Maybe she can't understand us," suggested another voice, this one belonging to Zex Tau, a Zephyrian whose species possessed natural quantum processing abilities. Human neural architecture is remarkably primitive. Perhaps she's operating on pure instinct, like the lower animals from her world. Maya reached the mess hall and joined the queue for nutrition pods. The hall was a marvel of engineering, designed to serve the dietary needs of hundreds of different species simultaneously. Atmospheric processors created breathing zones for methane breathers next to oxygen zones, while specialized replicators produced everything from liquid metals to complex organic compounds. She selected her standard human fare, a nutrition pod that supposedly contained all the vitamins and minerals a human needed, though it tasted like cardboard mixed with synthetic protein. As she turned to find a seat, she nearly collided with Veltar, a member of the Academy's most elite squadron. Veltar was a Nexari, a species known for their incredible reflexes and spatial awareness. They were natural pilots, capable of flying through asteroid fields at speeds that would turn most other beings into paste. Veltar's crystalline exoskeleton caught the light from overhead illumination, creating rainbow patterns across her translucent skin. "Excuse me," Maya said quietly, stepping aside. Veltar studied her with multifaceted eyes that could track dozens of objects simultaneously. "You're the human from Advanced Tactical Theory, aren't you?" Maya chunt. Maya nodded, surprised that anyone from the elite squadrons even knew her name. "I've been watching your simulation scores," Veltar continued. "They're interesting." Before Maya could respond, Krothos appeared beside them, his bulk casting a shadow over both smaller beings. "Don't waste your time, Veltar. The human is dead weight. She's only here because the council wants to look inclusive." "Is that so?" Veltar's tone remained neutral, but something in her posture shifted slightly. Among the Nexari, spatial positioning was a form of communication, and Maya caught the subtle signal of increased attention. 3 years without a single notable achievement, Krothos pressed on. No outstanding marks in combat training, no innovations in tactical studies, no leadership positions. She just exists. Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks, but forced herself to remain calm. Getting emotional would only prove their points about human irrationality and weakness. Instead, she focused on controlling her breathing, a technique she had learned during her childhood on Earth when dealing with bullies in her home colony. "Existing can be more difficult than you might imagine," Veltar said quietly, "especially when everyone around you expects you to fail." She turned to Maya directly. "I've noticed something about your simulation scores that the others haven't. Your tactical assessments are always accurate, even when they're marked as incorrect." Maya blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Last week's fleet engagement scenario," Veltar explained. "You proposed a defensive formation that Commander Thax rejected as overly cautious. But when I ran the simulation with your modifications, the survival rate increased by 37%. Krothos snorted, a sound like steam escaping from a pressure valve. "Survival isn't victory, Crystal Skull. This is a military academy, not a retirement home." "Survival is the foundation of all strategy," Veltar countered. "Dead soldiers can't complete missions." Maya found herself caught between fascination and discomfort with the conversation. For 3 years, she had assumed her contributions went unnoticed because they were inadequate. The possibility that they were being overlooked for other reasons had never occurred to her. "I should get to class," Maya said, starting to move toward the exit. "Wait," Veltar called out. "There's something you should know. Commander Thax is planning a major simulation exercise next week. Multi-species team formations, extended duration scenarios. The kind of test that can make or break a cadet's final evaluations." Maya paused. Final evaluations determined post-graduation assignments. A poor showing could mean assignment to some remote outpost or administrative position, effectively ending any hope of a meaningful military career. "Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked. Veltar's exoskeleton shifted colors slightly, displaying what Maya had learned to recognize as the Nexari equivalent of smile. "Because I think it's time for some of your classmates to learn what humans are really capable of." As Maya walked to her first class of the day, Advanced Xenobiology, she found herself thinking about Veltar's words. What were humans really capable of? On Earth, they had been the ultimate persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey across vast distances through sheer endurance and determination. They had survived ice ages, plague years, and natural disasters that had wiped out more physically powerful species. But here, surrounded by beings who could fly through space without ships, compute quantum equations in their heads, and regenerate lost limbs, what advantage could soft, weak, short-lived humans possibly have? Professor Kethvar, a vulpine with rust-colored fur and intelligent amber eyes, began the day's lesson on adaptive evolution in extreme environments. The vulpines were known for their analytical minds and teaching abilities, making them popular instructors throughout the galaxy. Today we will examine how different species have adapted to survival pressures, Kethvar announced, his voice carrying easily through the amphitheater-style classroom. Consider the Krillians, whose natural armor evolved in response to predators on their homeworld, or the Zephyrians, whose quantum processing capabilities developed to navigate the complex dimensional maze of their origin system. Maya took notes automatically, but her mind wandered to Earth's evolutionary pressures. Humans hadn't developed natural weapons or armor. They hadn't evolved telepathy or quantum processing. Instead, they had developed something subtler, but perhaps more powerful: the ability to adapt their strategies and tools to any situation. Each species represents a different solution to the fundamental challenge of survival, Kethvar continued. Physical strength, mental processing power, environmental adaptation, social cooperation. The galaxy is enriched by this diversity of approaches. A Zephyrian student raised one of her 3 hands. Professor, what about species that don't seem to have any particular evolutionary advantage? How do they survive long enough to achieve interstellar travel? Kethvar's ears twitched, a sign of amusement among his species. An excellent question, Zarathil. Can anyone think of an example? Several students glanced toward Maya, and she felt her cheeks warm again. She had become the class's go-to example of evolutionary inadequacy. Humans, Krothos rumbled from the back of the room. No natural weapons, no environmental resistances, no enhanced processing power. They're basically mobile protein packages. The class rippled with what Maya had learned to recognize as various forms of alien laughter. She kept her eyes focused on her notes, writing down Kethvar's words even though her hands were shaking slightly. Interesting hypothesis, Krothos, Kethvar said. Maya, would you care to respond? Maya's head snapped up. In 3 years, no professor had ever directly asked for her input when her species was being discussed. Usually, they treated her as a specimen to be analyzed rather than a student to be engaged. The classroom fell silent. Dozens of alien eyes, in colors ranging from black to purple to multifaceted crystal, fixed on her. Maya could hear her own heartbeat in the sudden quiet. Maya began, then stopped. What would she say? That humans were persistence hunters? That they had evolved to be adaptable rather than specialized? That their ancestors had survived by being too stubborn to die when everything else gave up? Take your time, Kethvar said gently. Maya took a deep breath. Humans did evolve an advantage, she said quietly. We just don't usually think of it as one. Go on, the professor encouraged. We evolved to be generalists in a world of specialists. While other species on Earth developed specific adaptations for specific environments, humans developed the ability to adapt to any environment by changing their behavior and tools instead of their biology. The classroom remained silent, but Maya sensed a shift in attention. Where before she had felt like an object of mockery, now she felt like they were actually listening. When the Ice Age came, humans didn't grow thicker fur. They learned to make clothes and build fires. When they moved to different continents, they didn't evolve different digestive systems. They learned to process and cook different foods. When they encountered predators stronger than them, they didn't grow claws or armor. They learned to make weapons and work together. Zarathil raised her hand again. But that's just basic tool use. Many species develop tools. Yes, Maya agreed. But most species develop tools as extensions of their existing capabilities. Humans develop tools as replacements for capabilities they didn't have. And, more importantly, we developed the ability to completely change our approach when the situation demanded it. Kethvar's ears were now pointed forward in what Maya recognized as intense interest. Can you elaborate on that last point? Maya hesitated. She was moving in a territory she had never discussed publicly before. Ideas she had developed during long, sleepless nights in her small dormitory room, thinking about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of superior beings. Most species, even very intelligent ones, tend to approach problems using their evolved strengths, she said slowly. A Krillian will instinctively look for a way to apply physical force. A Zephyrian will search for a computational solution. A Nexari will try to outmaneuver the problem. She paused, gathering courage for what came next. Humans will try all of those approaches, and, if none of them work, we'll invent completely new ones. We're the species that figured out how to throw rocks accurately enough to hunt animals 10 times our size, then later figured out how to throw rocks so accurately we could hit targets in other star systems. The silence in the classroom had taken on a different quality. Maya could sense she had their attention in a way she never had before. The reason humans don't seem to have evolutionary advantages is that our evolution optimized for one thing above all others: the ability to keep trying new solutions until something works. Other species might be stronger, faster, smarter, or more specialized, but humans are the species that simply refuses to accept that a problem can't be solved. Professor Ketvar slowly nodded. Persistence as an evolutionary strategy. Fascinating. Thank you, Maya. That's a perspective I hadn't considered before. As the class moved on to other topics, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years at the academy: a sense of belonging. Not because she had proven herself equal to her classmates, but because she had finally articulated something that made her differences feel like strengths rather than weaknesses. When class ended, several students lingered to ask follow-up questions about human evolutionary history. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, Maya found herself engaged in actual academic discussions rather than deflecting insults or avoiding attention. As she gathered her materials, Veltar approached. That was well said, the Nexari commented. I think you're beginning to understand what I meant about your tactical assessments. What do you mean? Maya asked. You don't just propose solutions, Veltar explained. You propose solutions that account for multiple failure modes. Your defensive formations aren't cautious, they're adaptive. They're designed to keep working even when the original plan falls apart. Maya considered this. Is that good or bad for a military officer? Veltar's exoskeleton shifted to display what Maya had learned was amusement. In a galaxy where most species approach warfare like a chess match with predetermined moves, I'd say it's exactly what we need. As Maya walked to her next class, she found herself thinking about the upcoming simulation exercise Veltar had mentioned. For 3 years, she had approached these tests as challenges to survive rather than opportunities to excel. But maybe survival and excellence weren't mutually exclusive concepts. Maybe it was time to stop hiding what humans were capable of and start showing the galaxy what persistence hunting looked like among the stars. The afternoon brought combat applications class, held in the Academy's massive training complex. The facility could simulate any environment in the known galaxy, from the crystal caverns of Nexar Prime to the plasma storms of the Zephyrian homeworld. Today's exercise was taking place in what the instructors called standard hostile environment, a rocky, mountainous terrain with limited visibility and multiple ambush points. Maya suited up in standard combat armor, the sleek material automatically adjusting to her human physiology. The armor provided basic protection and environmental support, but it couldn't compensate for fundamental biological differences. While her classmates' natural abilities were enhanced by the technology, Maya's equipment served mainly to keep her alive long enough to participate. The exercise was a search and rescue scenario. Teams of 3 would be dropped into the simulated environment and tasked with locating and extracting a downed pilot before hostile forces could capture them. Success was measured not just by completing the objective, but by how efficiently it was accomplished. Maya found herself assigned to a team with 2 classmates she rarely interacted with, Thurek a massive Gorvani whose species evolved from pack hunters on a high-gravity world, and Zix, a small but incredibly fast Skrix whose people were natural scouts and messengers. The three species couldn't have been more different. Thorax stood nearly 9 feet tall, his thick hide able to deflect small arms fire, and possessed natural echolocation abilities that worked even in total darkness. Zix barely reached Maya's shoulder, but could move at speeds that made her appear as little more than a blur, and her compound eyes could see across multiple spectrums simultaneously. "Wonderful," Thorek grumbled as their transport approached the drop zone. "The Academy's charity case and the hyperactive insect. This should be interesting." Zix's mandibles clicked in what Maya recognized as irritation. "At least I can actually move through the terrain, Stonehead. You'll be making enough noise to alert every hostile in the area." Maya said nothing, focusing instead on studying the mission briefings displayed on her helmet's heads-up display. The target was located somewhere in a 50-square-kilometer area of mountainous terrain. Hostile patrols were actively searching for the same target, and they outnumber the rescue teams 3-1. "What's your assessment, human?" Thorek asked, though his tone suggested he expected nothing useful. Maya continued reading through the tactical data. "The hostile forces are using standard search patterns," she said finally. "Grid-based sweeps moving from high-probability areas toward lower ones." "Obviously," Zix buzzed impatiently. "Any cadet could see that." "What's your point?" "My point is that they're searching for where a pilot would logically be after a crash," Maya explained. "But they're not accounting for where a pilot might choose to be after surviving a crash." Thorek's massive head tilted slightly. "Meaning?" Maya highlighted several locations on the tactical display. "Look at the terrain here. These are all areas the hostiles have marked as low priority because they're difficult to access and offer poor shelter. But they also offer excellent concealment and multiple escape routes. Those areas are also dangerous," Thorek pointed out. "Unstable ground, potential rock slides, limited water access." "Exactly," Maya said, "which means the hostiles won't expect anyone to be there voluntarily. If our down pilot is thinking tactically rather than just seeking immediate shelter, they'd pick danger they can control over capture they can't." Zix's eyes focused on Maya with what might have been increased interest. "You're suggesting we search the areas no one else is looking?" "I'm suggesting we think like someone who's trying not to be found," Maya clarified. "The hostile forces are using optimal search algorithms, which means they're predictable. Our pilot, if they're smart, will be somewhere suboptimal but unexpected." The transport shuddered as it entered the simulation zone. Through the viewports, Maya could see the rocky landscape stretching out below them, dotted with canyons, caves, and precarious stone formations. Multiple other transports were visible in the distance, carrying other cadet teams to their assigned drop zones. "Drop zone approaching," the pilot announced. 60 seconds. Maya checked her equipment one final time. Unlike her teammates, she carried no specialized gear beyond the standard loadout. No enhanced sensors like Thorek's natural echolocation. No speed enhancements like Zix's naturally rapid metabolism. Just basic human equipment optimized for a species that had evolved to be adaptable rather than specialized. "What's our formation going to be?" Thorek asked. "I can take point and clear obstacles. Zix can scout ahead and watch for hostiles." "You can." He paused, apparently struggling to think of what a human might contribute. "I can navigate," Maya said simply. "Navigate?" Zix's mandibles clicked skeptically. "The suits have navigation systems." "The suits have GPS and mapping systems," Maya corrected. "Navigation is about more than knowing where you are. It's about knowing where you should be." Before either of her teammates could respond, the drop signal activated. The transport's bay doors opened, and the three cadets rappelled down into the simulated wilderness. The moment Maya's feet touched the rocky ground, she began analyzing the environment with senses that had been trained by millions of years of human evolution. The wind patterns told her about thermal currents and potential weather changes. The distribution of vegetation revealed water sources and soil stability. The acoustic properties of the terrain suggested how sound would travel and where echoes might mask or reveal movement. Which direction? Thorek asked, activating his echolocation with a series of low clicks that resonated through the rock formations. Maya closed her eyes and extended her hearing, filtering out the sounds of her teammates' breathing and equipment to focus on the ambient audio environment. They're barely audible, a rhythmic pattern that didn't match wind or geological activity. Southeast, she said, opening her eyes and pointing toward a narrow canyon that appeared to lead nowhere. About 2 kilometers. How could you possibly know that? Zix demanded. I can hear a distress beacon, Maya explained. It's very faint, probably shielded by the canyon walls, but it's there. Thorek clicked again, his natural sonar much more powerful than human hearing. I don't detect anything. You're listening for obstacles and threats, Maya said. I'm listening for things that don't belong. The 3 cadets began moving toward the canyon, with Thorek clearing a path through the more difficult terrain and Zix scouting ahead for hostile patrols. Maya found herself in the middle, which was exactly where she wanted to be. From this position, she could observe both her teammates' techniques and the environment they were moving through. As they approached the canyon entrance, Zix suddenly froze. Hostile patrol, she buzzed quietly. 4 individuals, standard search formation, heading this way. Thorek immediately began looking for cover, his massive form making concealment challenging. Where can we hide? Maya was already studying the terrain with different eyes. Not looking for places to hide, but for ways to make the hostiles' search patterns work against them. We don't hide, she said quietly. We redirect. Before her teammates could object, Maya picked up a small rock and threw it with practiced accuracy toward a cluster of loose stones about 50 meters to their north. The impact created a small avalanche of pebbles. Nothing dramatic, but enough to make noise in the otherwise quiet environment. The hostile patrol immediately altered course to investigate the sound, their formation shifting to approach what they assumed was a potential target location. Clever, Zix admitted as the 3 cadets slipped past the distracted hostiles. But that won't work twice. It doesn't need to work twice, Maya replied. By the time they figure out it was a false lead, we'll be in the canyon where their search patterns won't reach. The canyon proved to be exactly the kind of location Maya had expected. Narrow, winding, and filled with acoustic dead zones that would make it nearly impossible to search effectively with conventional methods. More importantly, it led to a series of connected caves that would provide excellent concealment for someone who didn't mind being temporarily trapped. Still hearing that beacon? Thorek asked as they navigated deeper into the canyon. Maya paused to listen again. The signal was stronger now, but still irregular. It's not a standard distress beacon, she realized. It's improvised. Someone's using their suit's proximity sensors to create a pattern. That's actually quite smart, Zix acknowledged. A distress beacon would be detected by hostiles, but proximity sensor activity would look like environmental interference. They found the down pilot in a cave system approximately 3 kilometers from their drop point, exactly where Maya's analysis had suggested, somewhere dangerous enough that casual searches wouldn't find them, but accessible enough for a rescue team that knew where to look. The pilot was a Nexari instructor named Kethal, whose crystalline exoskeleton showed signs of crash damage, but who was otherwise in good condition. She had indeed been using her suit systems to create a faint signal that would attract rescuers while remaining undetectable to hostile forces. Impressive tracking, Kethal commented as the 3 cadets prepared for the extraction phase of the mission. How did you locate me so quickly? Human navigation techniques, Thorek answered, and Maya was surprised to hear something like respect in his voice. The extraction proved more challenging than the search. Hostile forces had expanded their search patterns, and several teams were now converging on the canyon area. The direct route back to the extraction point was blocked by at least 2 patrol units. We could try to fight through, Thorek suggested, checking his weapons systems. Negative, Zix replied. We're outnumbered, and they have better defensive positions. Maya was studying the tactical display, looking for patterns in the hostile movement. They're trying to funnel us toward the main canyon exit, she observed. Classic containment strategy. So we're trapped? Kethal asked. Only if we play by their rules, Maya said. She highlighted a route that led away from the extraction point rather than toward it. We go deeper into the mountains. Circle around behind their search perimeter. That will take hours, Thorek protested. We'll miss the extraction window. No, Maya said, her confidence growing as she saw the complete picture. We'll arrive exactly when they least expect us. The route Maya had chosen was longer in distance but shorter in time because it avoided all the choke points where hostile forces were positioning themselves. More importantly, it brought them to the extraction point from an unexpected direction, allowing them to bypass the defensive perimeter entirely. When they finally reached the extraction zone, Maya's team was the first to arrive. Other cadet teams were still fighting through hostile positions or searching areas that had already been cleared. The exercise ended with a complete tactical success. Objective achieved, no casualties, and minimum time to completion. As they returned to the academy, Maya found herself thinking about what had just happened. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, she had taken the lead in a tactical situation, not because her teammates couldn't handle it, but because her approach had been more effective than theirs. How did you know that route would work? Zix asked during the post-mission debrief. Maya considered the question carefully. I didn't know, she admitted. But I knew the alternatives wouldn't work, so I looked for something different. That's not a strategy, Thorek said, but his tone was curious rather than dismissive. That's just trying things until something works. Yes, Maya agreed. That's exactly what it is. And for the first time in 3 years, she said it with pride rather than apology. Word of Maya's successful navigation exercise spread through the academy faster than she had expected. By the next morning, cadets who had never spoken to her before were nodding respectfully in the corridors. Some even stopped to ask questions about human tactical thinking, though Maya suspected curiosity rather than genuine interest motivated most of these interactions. Commander Thax, the Draknari officer who taught advanced strategic theory, made no direct mention of the previous day's exercise when Maya entered his classroom. The Draknari were a warrior species known for their rigid military hierarchies and their belief that honor could only be earned through combat prowess. Commander Thax stood over 7 feet tall, his scaled skin bearing the ritual scars that marked his rank and battle experience. Maya took her usual seat in the back row, expecting the day's lesson to proceed as normal. Instead, Commander Thax announced that he would be revealing details about the upcoming major simulation exercise that Veltar had mentioned. In 1 week, you will participate in the Academy's annual Strategic Command Assessment, Commander Thax announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. This exercise will determine your final evaluations and, consequently, your post-graduation assignments. The classroom buzzed with nervous energy. Maya could hear whispered conversations in dozens of different languages as cadets discussed the implications. This was what every student at Nexus Prime had been working toward for years. The scenario will be complex, Commander Thax continued. Multiple star systems, diverse terrain types, and opposing forces equipped with advanced technology. Each team will command a mixed fleet with representatives from various species, simulating real galactic military operations. A Zephyrian student raised her hand. Sir, what are the victory conditions? Commander Thax's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Victory will be determined by mission completion, resource efficiency, and tactical innovation. However, this year we are introducing an additional element. He activated the classroom's holographic display, showing a 3-dimensional map of multiple star systems connected by hyperspace routes. The scale was enormous, dozens of worlds, hundreds of potential battle sites, and thousands of variables to consider. The exercise will continue until only one team remains capable of completing their assigned objectives, Commander Thax explained. Teams that suffer catastrophic losses or fail to adapt to changing conditions will be eliminated from the simulation. The final standing teams will receive commendations, while eliminated teams will face academic review. Maya felt her stomach clench. Academic review was a polite term for the process that determined whether a cadet would be allowed to graduate or would be sent home in disgrace. For a human cadet who was already viewed as a charity case, elimination from the major assessment would almost certainly mean the end of her military career. Teams will be assigned randomly, Commander Thax announced. Species diversity is mandatory, ensuring that each group must learn to coordinate different tactical approaches and biological capabilities. Random assignment. Maya realized this meant she might not be grouped with cadets who had learned to work with her, like Thorek and Zix. She might end up with teammates who still viewed humans as liability rather than asset. One final note, Commander Thax added. This exercise is observed by representatives from major military commands throughout the galaxy. Outstanding performance may result in direct recruitment offers from elite units. Poor performance will be noted in your permanent records. As the class moved into theoretical discussions of multi-species command structures, Maya found herself thinking about the mathematics of the situation. If teams were eliminated until only one remained capable of completing objectives, the exercise was designed to test not just tactical skill, but resilience under pressure. The kind of situation where her species' evolutionary advantage might actually matter. After class, Maya was surprised to find Veltar waiting for her in the corridor. The Nexari had never sought her out outside of their brief conversation in the mess hall. "Walk with me," Veltar suggested, and Maya fell into step beside her as they moved through the Academy's crystal corridors. "I wanted to discuss something with you before team assignments are announced," Veltar began. "I've been analyzing the performance data from yesterday's exercise, and I think you should know what I found." Maya waited, unsure whether to expect praise or criticism. "Your navigation technique wasn't just effective," Veltar explained. "It was optimal in ways that our tactical computers didn't predict. When I ran simulations using standard search algorithms, your chosen route shouldn't have worked. But it did work," Maya pointed out. "Exactly. Which suggests that human intuition incorporates variables that our mathematical models don't account for." Veltar's exoskeleton shifted colors as she spoke, displaying patterns Maya had learned to associate with intense thought. "I think you're operating on a level of tactical analysis that most of us don't recognize." They reached a viewport overlooking the Academy's main training complex, where hundreds of cadets from dozens of species were engaged in various exercises. Maya could see Krillians practicing close-quarters combat, Zephyrians working through quantum calculation challenges, and Nexari perfecting high-speed maneuvering techniques. "What are you saying?" Maya asked. "I'm saying that tomorrow, when team assignments are announced, I'm going to request you for my unit," Veltar replied. "And I think you should be prepared to take a leadership role." Maya blinked in surprise. "Leadership? Veltar, I'm barely qualified to be here, let alone lead anyone. You navigated a search and rescue operation more effectively than cadets with enhanced sensory capabilities and advanced processing power," Veltar countered. "You found solutions that our tactical computers couldn't predict. That's not incompetence. That's a different kind of intelligence." Before Maya could respond, they were interrupted by approaching footsteps. Krothos rounded the corner, accompanied by two other Krillians from the Academy's advanced combat program. The three massive forms blocked most of the corridor, their natural armor plates gleaming under the artificial lighting. Well, Krothos rumbled. "The crystal skull and the meat bag having a private meeting. How touching. Is there something you needed, Krothos?" Veltar asked. "Har tone carefully neutral." "Just wanted to congratulate our human friend on her recent success," Krothos replied, his voice heavy with sarcasm. "Very impressive how she managed to hide in a cave while her teammates did the real work." Maya felt familiar heat rising in her cheeks, but she forced herself to remain calm. Getting emotional would only confirm their preconceptions about human irrationality. "Actually," Veltar interjected, "Maya was the primary navigator for the exercise. The successful completion was largely due to her tactical analysis." One of the other Krillians snorted. Tactical analysis? She got lucky and stumbled onto the right path. Any first-year cadet could have done the same thing. Could they? Maya heard herself saying, surprising everyone, including herself. Because as I recall, your team spent 6 hours searching the wrong grid square and never found your target at all. The corridor fell silent. Maya realized she had just directly challenged a Krillian combat specialist in front of witnesses, something that would have been unthinkable for her even a day earlier. Krathos took a step forward, his massive form casting a shadow over Maya. Did you just question my tactical abilities, human? I questioned your results, Maya replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Your tactical abilities are obviously superior to mine in direct combat. But the exercise wasn't about combat. It was about problem-solving. Problem-solving? The second Krillian laughed. You think hiding in caves is problem-solving? I think adaptation is problem-solving, Maya said, finding confidence she didn't know she possessed. You approach the exercise like a combat mission because that's what Krillians excel at. But it wasn't a combat mission. It was a search and rescue operation, which requires different thinking. Krathos's armor plates shifted slightly, a sign of agitation among his species. And what kind of thinking would that be? Maya took a deep breath. This was the moment where she either proved her point or made enemies that would make her remaining time at the academy miserable. The kind of thinking that asks, what would I do if I were the target? Instead of, how do I find the target? She explained. You were thinking like hunters. I was thinking like prey. The statement hung in the air between them. Maya realized she had just articulated something fundamental about human military thinking that she had never put into words before. Humans spent millions of years being hunted by creatures bigger, stronger, and better armed than we were, she continued. We learned to think like the things that were trying to kill us. That's how we survived long enough to become the hunters ourselves. Veltar's exoskeleton displayed colors Maya had never seen before, complex patterns that suggested fascination and respect. You're saying that human tactical thinking is based on survival strategies rather than dominant strategies. I'm saying that when most species design tactics, they think about how to use their strengths to overcome obstacles, Maya replied. Humans think about how to turn obstacles into advantages. Krathos studied her for a long moment. That's an interesting theory, meatbag. We'll see how it works out for you when the real exercise begins. The 3 Krillians moved on, but Maya could hear them discussing her words in their own language as they walked away. She couldn't understand the specific words, but the tone suggested they were taking her more seriously than before. That was well said, Veltar commented once they were alone again. You articulated something I suspected, but couldn't prove. What do you mean? I've been studying human military history since you were assigned to my tactical theory class, Veltar explained. Your species' approach to warfare is unlike anything else in the galaxy. You don't just defeat enemies. You convince them that fighting you isn't worth the cost. Maya, consider this. We call it asymmetric warfare. Fighting smarter instead of harder. Exactly. And that's exactly what tomorrow's exercise is going to require. That evening, Maya found herself in the Academy's library, researching everything she could find about the previous year's strategic command assessments. The library was a vast digital archive containing military records, tactical analyses, and historical data from across the galaxy. As one of the few humans with access to this information, Maya had a unique opportunity to study how different species approached large-scale military operations. What she found was both enlightening and concerning. The exercises were indeed designed to test adaptability under pressure, but they consistently favored species with specific advantages. Zephyrians excelled in scenarios requiring complex calculations and multidimensional thinking. Krillians dominated exercises emphasizing direct confrontation and resource control. Nexari performed best in situations requiring speed and precision. Humans have participated in only 3 previous assessments, and their performance had been uniformly poor. Not because of individual incompetence, but because the scenarios seemed designed around capabilities that humans simply didn't possess. Maya was deep in analysis when she heard soft footsteps approaching. She looked up to see Zix, the Skrik scout from yesterday's exercise, carrying a stack of data tablets. "Mind if I join you?" Zix asked, her mandibles clicking softly. "I've been doing research too." Maya gestured to an empty seat. "What kind of research?" "Team composition analysis," Zix replied, settling into the specially designed chair that accommodated her species' unique anatomy. "I've been studying how different species combinations perform in these exercises." She activated one of her tablets, displaying a complex chart showing performance correlations. Mixed species teams consistently outperform single species groups, but only when the species complement each other's capabilities. When species with conflicting approaches are grouped together, performance drops significantly. Maya studied the data. What constitutes conflicting approaches? Primarily tactical philosophy differences, Zix explained. Species that prefer direct confrontation working with species that favor stealth and misdirection. Or species that prioritize individual achievement paired with species that emphasize collective action. Where do humans fit in this analysis? Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Zix's compound eyes focused on Maya with what might have been sympathy. That's the problem. Humans don't fit clearly into any category. Your tactical approaches seem to vary based on circumstances rather than following consistent patterns. Maya nodded. This confirmed something she had been thinking about since her conversation with Veltar. Most species have evolved optimal strategies for specific types of challenges. Humans evolved to have no optimal strategy, so we had to develop the ability to create new strategies as needed, which makes you either perfectly suited for an exercise that requires adaptation, Zix observed, or completely unsuited for an exercise that requires specialized capabilities. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, each absorbed in their research. Maya found herself developing a deeper appreciation for Zix's analytical abilities. The Skrik were natural scouts and messengers, but they were also surprisingly skilled at data analysis and pattern recognition. "I found something interesting," Zix announced suddenly. "Look at this performance data from 2 years ago." She displayed a tactical map showing the progression of that year's exercise. The winning team wasn't the one with the best individual capabilities. It was the one that maintained operational capacity the longest. Maya studied the progression. They didn't try to win quickly. They tried to survive until everyone else had been eliminated. Exactly. And look at how they did it. Zix highlighted specific tactical decisions. Every time they encountered a superior force, they withdrew and regrouped. Every time they had an advantage, they exploited it just enough to maintain their position, but not enough to draw major retaliation. "Persistence hunting," Maya murmured. "What?" "It's a hunting strategy humans used on Earth," Maya explained. Instead of trying to bring down prey with a single attack, persistence hunters would follow their target for hours or days, wearing it down gradually until it couldn't continue. Zix's mandibles clicked, and what Maya had learned was excitement. That's exactly what the winning team did. They turned the exercise into an endurance challenge instead of a tactical competition. Maya felt pieces clicking together in her mind. "Zix, would you be interested in forming a study group? I think we might be able to figure out how to approach tomorrow's team assignment strategically." "You mean try to influence who we get paired with?" "I mean, try to understand what kind of team composition would be most effective for an exercise designed to test adaptive resilience rather than raw capability." Zix's eyes seemed to glitter with interest. "I'll send messages to Thorek and Veltar. If they're willing, we could pool our research tonight." 2 hours later, Maya found herself in an unused conference room with an unlikely collection of study partners. Veltar had arrived with detailed analyses of previous winners' tactical decisions. Thorek had brought comprehensive data on resource management and logistics. Zix had compiled pattern analyses of team elimination factors. To Maya's surprise, they were joined by Kethal, the Nexari instructor they had rescued during yesterday's exercise. "I hope you don't mind my intrusion," Kethal said as she settled into the room's adaptive seating. "When I heard about your research group, I thought I might be able to contribute some perspective." Instructor perspective, väldigt raskt. Observer perspektiv, ¿qué tal korrektiv? I've been present for 3 of these assessments, and I've noticed patterns that the official analyses don't always capture. Maya leaned forward. What kind of patterns? Kethal activated a holographic display showing a 3-dimensional tactical map. The exercises are designed to test specific competencies, but they consistently reward behaviors that aren't officially measured, such as cooperation over competition, Kethal explained. Teams that spend time helping each other consistently outperform teams that focus solely on their own objectives. Risk management over bold action. Teams that avoid unnecessary casualties last longer than teams that achieve spectacular short-term victories. And, most importantly, adaptation over optimization. She highlighted several decision points on the map. Teams that modify their strategies based on changing conditions consistently outperform teams that execute perfect versions of their original plans. Maya exchanged glances with her study partners. That sounds like human tactical thinking. It sounds like thinking that incorporates human perspectives, Kethal agreed. Which is why I believe mixed teams with human members have potential advantages that aren't reflected in historical data. Thorek rumbled thoughtfully. Historical data is based on humans being assigned to teams that didn't know how to utilize human capabilities. Exactly, Veltar added. Maya, what would a team designed around human tactical principles look like? Maya considered the question carefully. This was perhaps the most important analysis she would ever make. It would prioritize information gathering over immediate action, she said slowly. It would focus on sustainable operations rather than dramatic victories. It would look for ways to turn enemy strengths into weaknesses rather than trying to match enemy capabilities directly. And what kind of species would complement that approach? Zix asked. Maya looked around the room at her unlikely study partners. A Nexari pilot known for precision and adaptability. A Gorvani heavy combat specialist with natural tactical instincts. A Skrik scout with exceptional analytical capabilities. A Nexari instructor with comprehensive knowledge of exercise patterns. Species that can provide capabilities humans lack while benefiting from human strategic thinking, Maya realized. Scout capabilities for information gathering. Heavy combat capabilities for when direct action is unavoidable. Precision capabilities for when technical skills are required. Kethal's exoskeleton displayed colors of approval. And what role would the human play in such a team? Maya took a deep breath. For 3 years, she had thought of herself as the weak link in any group. But sitting in this room, surrounded by beings who were asking for her strategic input, she felt something shifting in her understanding of her place at the academy. Coordinator, she said finally, not because humans are natural leaders, but because human thinking incorporates multiple perspectives by default. We're the species that learn to think like our predators, our prey, our environment, and ourselves simultaneously. Strategic integration, Veltar mused. Using human adaptive thinking to coordinate diverse capabilities into flexible tactical approaches. It's worth trying, Thorek agreed. Though we'll need to be careful about team assignment politics. Maya nodded. Tomorrow would bring the announcement of team compositions for the most important exercise of their academy careers. Tonight had given her something she hadn't possessed since arriving at Nexus Prime. A clear sense of what humans might actually be good at in a galactic military context. As the study group dispersed, each member carrying copies of their collective research, Maya realized that she was no longer approaching the upcoming exercise as a challenge to survive. She was approaching it as an opportunity to demonstrate that human persistence hunting could work on a strategic scale. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when the species that refused to give up was finally given teammates who understood what that meant. The team assignment ceremony took place in the Academy's central amphitheater, a massive space designed to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of hundreds of species simultaneously. Maya sat with her study group partners, each of them tense with anticipation as Commander Thax prepared to announce the team compositions for the Strategic Command Assessment. Team assignments have been generated using advanced algorithmic analysis to ensure optimal species diversity and complementary capabilities, Commander Thax announced, his scaled form imposing even at the center of the vast space. Each team will consist of 5 members representing different tactical specializations. Maya felt her heart racing as the commander began reading team assignments. The amphitheater buzzed with nervous energy as cadets learned who they would be working with for the most important evaluation of their academy careers. Team 7, Commander Thax called out. Veltar of Nexar Prime, Pilot Specialization. Thorek of Gorvith, Heavy Combat Specialization. Zix of Skrixtel, Reconnaissance Specialization. Kethal of Nexar Prime, Tactical Coordination Specialization. Maya held her breath. From members announced, 1 position remaining. Her study group partners were all assigned to the same team, but there was no guarantee she would join them. Maya Chan of Earth, Strategic Integration Specialization. Maya exhaled slowly, barely believing what she had heard. Not only had she been assigned to the team she had hoped for, but the Academy's computers had classified her role as Strategic Integration, exactly the function she had identified during their research session. Around the amphitheater, other teams were being announced. Team 1 included Krothos and 2 other Krillian combat specialists, paired with a Zephyrin computational expert and a Vulpine communication specialist. Team 3 featured advanced students from the Academy's elite squadrons, representing some of the highest individual scores in Academy history. As the assignments concluded, Maya found herself surrounded by her new teammates. The relief of being grouped with familiar faces was overshadowed by the realization that expectations had changed dramatically. These weren't just study partners anymore. They were looking to her for strategic leadership. Strategic Integration Specialization, Veltar commented as they moved toward the briefing areas. I've never heard of that classification before. Neither have I, Kethal admitted. It seems the Academy's assignment algorithms have identified a new tactical role. Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. I guess we'll find out what it means together. The briefing process took place over 3 days, with each team receiving detailed information about their assigned objectives, available resources, and operational parameters. Maya's team, now officially designated Team 7, found themselves assigned to what the instructors called Deep Strategic Operations. Their mission parameters were unlike anything Maya had studied in previous Academy exercises. Instead of commanding a single fleet or defending a specific location, Team 7 was tasked with coordinating resistance operations across multiple star systems simultaneously. They would be responsible for resource allocation, intelligence networks, and strategic coordination between diverse resistance cells operating under different conditions. This isn't a traditional military exercise, Thorek observed as they reviewed their mission briefing. This is more like coordinating a rebellion or a persistence hunting campaign across multiple star systems, Maya added, recognizing patterns that felt familiar despite the unprecedented scale. The opposition forces they would face represented the Academy's most advanced tactical simulation ever attempted. Enemy units would be controlled by the Academy's quantum computing systems, capable of processing thousands of variables simultaneously and adapting their strategies in real time based on Team 7's actions. Look at these resource constraints, Zix noted, highlighting sections of their operational parameters. We start with minimal assets and have to build our capabilities through successful operations. Maya studied the constraints carefully. It's designed to test whether we can create effective strategies from limited resources rather than execute optimal strategies with unlimited resources. Asymmetric varför scenarios veltar regrid. Exactly what human military history suggests your species excels at. Kethal activated a 3-dimensional display showing their area of operations. 12 star systems, 47 inhabited worlds, hundreds of potential operation sites. We need to establish coordination protocols that can function across this entire region. The scale was staggering. Maya had studied historical military campaigns, but Nothing in human experience compared to coordinating strategic operations across multiple star systems. The logistics alone involve considerations of interstellar communication delays, diverse environmental conditions, and coordination between species with fundamentally different approaches to warfare. We need to start by understanding our resources, Maya said, falling into the strategic thinking patterns she had developed during her research. Not just what we have, but what we can build from what we have. Over the following hours, Team 7 conducted detailed analysis of their starting position. They began with a single small starship, basic communication equipment, and access to a network of potential sympathizers across their assigned systems. Their opposition controlled major military installations, advanced fleets, and established supply lines. On paper, this looks impossible, Thora commented. How are 5 cadets supposed to coordinate effective resistance against forces that outnumber and outgun us by factors of hundreds? The same way 5 early humans were supposed to hunt creatures 10 times their size, Maya replied, by not trying to match their capabilities directly. She began sketching organizational charts on the briefing room's display systems. Look at our actual advantages. We're small enough to avoid detection while gathering intelligence. We're mobile enough to strike at unexpected locations. We're diverse enough to adapt our approaches to different environments. And we're persistent enough to keep trying new strategies when the obvious ones don't work, Zix added, understanding where Maya's thinking was leading. Maya nodded. The opposition forces are designed to respond optimally to conventional military strategies. They'll expect us to try to build traditional military assets and engage in conventional battles. So we don't do any of those things, Veltar concluded. We do exactly what they don't expect, Maya agreed. We build networks instead of armies. We create sustainable operations instead of spectacular victories. We make the cost of fighting us higher than the benefit of controlling the territory. Kethal's exoskeleton displayed patterns Maya had learned to associate with intense calculation. You're proposing to turn this into an endurance contest. I'm proposing to turn this into the kind of contest that humans evolved to win, Maya corrected. The kind where victory goes to whoever refuses to give up longest. The exercise began at 0800 hours 3 days later. Team 7 took their positions in the Academy's Advanced Command Center, a facility that could simulate real-time military operations across multiple star systems. Maya found herself seated at the central coordination station, with her teammates positioned around her in a configuration that allowed for constant communication and rapid decision-making. The opening phase of the exercise revealed the true scope of their challenge. Opposition forces controlled every major military installation in their assigned region, maintained active patrol schedules on all primary hyperspace routes, and possessed intelligence networks that could detect conventional military buildups within hours. Initial intelligence assessment complete, Zix reported from her reconnaissance station. Enemy forces are configured for rapid response to traditional threats. Heavy concentration of assets around strategic targets, overlapping patrol patterns, standard counterinsurgency protocols. Maya studied the tactical displays showing enemy positions and movement patterns. They're set up to fight a conventional resistance movement. What would an unconventional resistance movement look like? Smaller, more distributed, Thorax suggested. Individual cells operating independently rather than coordinated units. Focused on disruption rather than destruction, Veltar added, making their operations more expensive rather than trying to eliminate their capabilities. And patient, Kethal concluded, willing to build slowly rather than trying to achieve immediate results. Maya began developing what she privately thought of as the persistence hunting protocol. Instead of trying to establish military bases or build fleets, Team 7 would focus on creating sustainable intelligence networks, identifying vulnerabilities in enemy operations, and conducting precisely targeted actions designed to force the opposition to waste resources on defensive measures. First priority is information, Maya announced. We need to understand how they make decisions before we try to influence those decisions. The initial weeks of the simulation passed slowly as Team 7 focused on intelligence, gathering rather than direct action. They established contact with sympathizer networks on dozens of worlds, created secure communication protocols that could function despite enemy countermeasures, and began mapping the complex logistics networks that kept enemy forces operational. Other teams in the exercise were taking more aggressive approaches. Team 1, led by Krathos, had immediately begun attempting to capture military installations and build conventional resistance fleets. Team 3 was focusing on high-value target elimination, using their advanced individual capabilities to conduct spectacular operations against enemy leadership. Both approaches were achieving impressive short-term results, but Maya noticed concerning patterns in the overall tactical situation. "Look at these resource expenditure reports," she said during a strategy session. "Teams that are achieving dramatic victories are also suffering dramatic losses. They're trading long-term sustainability for immediate impact. The opposition forces are adapting faster than they expected," Zix observed. "Every successful operation leads to improved enemy countermeasures." Maya nodded. This was exactly what she had hoped to avoid. Conventional military thinking assumes that successful operations create momentum that leads to more successful operations. But the opposition forces in this exercise are designed to learn and adapt. What worked yesterday won't work tomorrow. So what's our approach? Veltor asked. "We make them adapt to things that don't threaten them directly," Maya explained. "We focus on operations that succeed regardless of their countermeasures." Team 7 began implementing what Maya called parallel pressure tactics. Instead of targeting military assets directly, they focused on the complex logistics networks that kept enemy forces operational. Communication disruptions that forced enemies to waste time coordinating simple operations. Supply line delays that required defensive redeployments. Information campaigns that made enemy forces uncertain about the reliability of their intelligence. None of these operations achieved dramatic results individually, but their cumulative effect was to make enemy operations significantly more expensive and less efficient. Opposition forces found themselves spending increasing amounts of time and resources on activities that didn't contribute to their strategic objectives. "It's working," Kethal reported during their third week of operations. "Enemy response times are increasing, patrol efficiency is declining, and they're showing signs of resource strain." Maya studied the overall tactical situation. Other teams were still achieving more spectacular individual victories, but the persistence hunting approach was beginning to show its advantages. Team 7 was the only group that had increased their operational capacity over time rather than depleting it through expensive engagements. "How are the other teams doing?" Thorek asked. Maya brought up the exercise-wide status reports. The results were sobering. Of the original 12 teams, 3 had already been eliminated due to catastrophic losses. 5 more were showing signs of significant resource depletion and would likely be eliminated within the next few days. Team 1, despite Krathos's impressive combat leadership, was struggling with sustainability issues. Their aggressive approach had achieved several major victories, but each success had cost them resources they couldn't replace. Team 3 was facing a different problem. Their focus on high-value targets had made them a priority for enemy countermeasures. They were now spending most of their resources on defensive operations rather than offensive ones. "We're one of only 4 teams still operating at full capacity," Veltar observed. "And we're the only team whose capacity is actually increasing," Zix added. Maya felt a mixture of pride and concern. Their strategy was working, but the real test would come when they had to face the remaining teams directly. The exercise parameters called for continued eliminations until only one team remained operationally effective. "Phase 2 is about to begin," Kethal announced, reading incoming communications from exercise control. Remaining teams will now be assigned overlapping operational areas. Direct competition for resources and objectives. Maya realized that the exercise had been designed in multiple phases specifically to test different types of strategic thinking. The opening phase had tested sustainability under pressure. The upcoming phase would test adaptability when facing peer competitors rather than superior forces. New objective assignments incoming, Veltar reported. Maya studied the updated mission parameters. Team 7 was now responsible for securing and maintaining control of a specific star system while simultaneously preventing other teams from achieving their own objectives in overlapping areas. This was the moment she had been anticipating and dreading. No longer were they facing simulated enemy forces designed to respond predictably. Now they were facing other cadet teams, each with their own strategic approaches, and each capable of learning and adapting in real time. Assessment. Maya asked her teammates. We're facing Team 1 and Team 3 in our primary operational area, Thorek reported. Both teams have proven combat capabilities, but are operating with depleted resources. Team 9 has secondary objectives that overlap with ours, Zix added. There is a Zephyrian-heavy unit that specializes in computational optimization, strong tactical planning capabilities, and Team 11 is positioned to interfere with all of our supply lines, Kethal concluded. Mixed species composition, conservative tactical approach, excellent defensive capabilities. Maya considered the challenge. For teams, each with different strengths and different resource levels, operating in overlapping areas with competing objectives. The kind of complex multi-party competition that human strategic thinking had evolved to handle. This is where persistence hunting gets interesting, she said finally. When you're not just hunting one target, but competing with other hunters for the same territory. She began sketching new organizational charts. We need to stop thinking about this as a military exercise and start thinking about it as an ecosystem. We're not trying to defeat the other teams directly. We're trying to create conditions where defeating us is more expensive than focusing on their own objectives. Ecosystem thinking veltar must. Make ourselves valuable enough to other teams that they prefer cooperation to competition. And make ourselves expensive enough to attack that direct confrontation isn't worth the cost, Thorek added. Maya nodded. We're going to do something that none of the other teams will expect. We're going to offer them deals. The suggestion hung in the air for a moment as her teammates considered the implications. You mean cooperation? Zix asked. With teams we're competing against? I mean conditional cooperation, Maya clarified. Deals that benefit both sides as long as they stick to the agreements, but that automatically punish betrayal. Kethal's exoskeleton displayed patterns of intrigue. Elaborate. Maya activated the strategic display and began outlining her proposal. Look at our competitive situation. We're all trying to achieve overlapping objectives with limited resources. Traditional military thinking says we fight each other until one team wins. But what if we could structure the competition so that cooperation is more profitable than conflict? She highlighted specific areas on the tactical map. Team 1 needs defensive support for their resource extraction operations. We need access to heavy combat capabilities for specific objectives. Instead of fighting each other for control of disputed territory, we coordinate operations that benefit both teams. What's to stop them from betraying us once they get what they need? Thorek asked. Information asymmetry, Maya replied. We're the team with the best intelligence networks. We make ourselves valuable by providing information they can't get elsewhere, and expensive to betray by ensuring that attacking us means losing access to intelligence that makes their other operations more successful. And if they betray us anyway, Veltor prest. Maya's expression hardened. Then, we demonstrate why humans got the reputation for being the galaxy's most persistent enemies. Over the following days, Team 7 began implementing what Maya privately called the ecosystem strategy. They approached each competing team with carefully structured cooperation proposals designed to make collaboration more profitable than conflict while ensuring that betrayal would be severely punished. Team 1 accepted a deal for mutual defensive support in exchange for intelligence sharing and coordinated resource extraction. Team 9 agreed to computational analysis support in exchange for reconnaissance data and communication security. Even Team 11, The most defensively oriented group agreed to limited cooperation agreements that benefited both sides. The strategy worked better than Maya had hoped. Instead of depleting resources fighting each other, the cooperating teams began achieving objectives more efficiently than any individual team could manage alone. Their combined capabilities created operational advantages that none of them possessed individually. But the real test came when Team 3, the elite squadron team, refused all cooperation offers and began conducting aggressive operations designed to disrupt the cooperative agreements. "They're trying to force us back into direct competition," Kethal observed as reports came in of Team 3's attacks on cooperative operations. "They're trying to prove that cooperation is weakness," Veltar corrected. Maya studied the tactical reports. Team 3 was indeed achieving impressive short-term results by focusing their advanced capabilities on disrupting cooperative efforts. They were betting that they could force other teams back into individual competition, where their superior individual skills would give them decisive advantages. "Thomas, show them what happens when you declare war on a persistence hunter," Maya said quietly. She began issuing new orders to her team and their cooperative partners. But instead of defensive measures or counterattacks, her instructions focused on making Team 3's aggressive strategy unsustainable. Every successful operation Team 3 conducted was met with immediate adaptations that made similar operations more difficult. Every resource they captured was subjected to ongoing pressure that made maintaining it expensive. Every advantage they achieved was systematically eroded through patient, coordinated responses from multiple directions. "When I try to defeat them," Maya explained to her confused teammates, "we're making them defeat themselves by ensuring that every victory costs more than it's worth." The approach required patience and coordination that most military thinking didn't account for. But as days passed, Team 3 began showing signs of the resource depletion that had eliminated earlier teams. Their impressive capabilities were being worn down by the constant need to defend achievements that brought diminishing returns. "They're adapting," Zix warned during one of their daily strategy sessions. "Their latest operations are more efficient, more focused." "Good," Maya replied, surprising her teammates. "That means they're learning to think like us. The question is whether they can learn fast enough to avoid elimination." The answer came 2 days later when Team 3 requested a meeting to discuss potential cooperation agreements. Maya realized that Team 7 had achieved something unprecedented in the exercise's history. They had convinced a superior force to negotiate rather than fight, not through superior military capability, but by making continued conflict more expensive than cooperation. As she prepared for the negotiation session, Maya reflected on how much had changed since her arrival at Nexus Prime 3 years earlier. She was no longer the silent, invisible human trying not to draw attention. She was the strategic coordinator for a multi-species alliance that had redefined how the Academy's most advanced exercise could be approached. The persistence hunt was far from over, but for the first time since arriving at the Academy, Maya felt confident that she understood what humans were really capable of among the stars. The negotiation meeting took place in a neutral simulation space, a sterile conference room that could accommodate the diverse physiological needs of all participating species. Maya found herself facing Team 3's leadership across a polished table that seemed to stretch for miles in the tense silence. Team 3's leader was Zareth, a Draknari combat specialist whose scales bore the scars of countless training exercises. Like Commander Thax, the Draknari believed in military honor earned through individual prowess and direct confrontation. Beside him sat Lyria, a Zephyrian quantum strategist whose processing capabilities allowed her to calculate probability matrices in real time, and Crixtel, a Nexri pilot whose speed and precision had made him legendary among the Academy's flight instructors. "You requested this meeting," Zareth began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to battlefield command. "What terms are you proposing?" Maya had spent the previous night preparing for this conversation, knowing that it might determine not only the outcome of the exercise, but also the future of human participation in galactic military operations. Everything she had learned about human strategic thinking would be tested in the next hour. "We're not proposing terms," Maya replied calmly. "We're offering you the opportunity to join a sustainable operational framework instead of continuing a strategy that will eliminate your team within 72 hours. The directness of her statement caused visible reactions around the table. Zareth's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of irritation among the Draknari. Lyria's multifaceted eyes focused intently on Maya, processing probabilities at quantum speeds. "Eliminate us?" Crixtel laughed, a sound like wind through crystal formations. "We've achieved more tactical victories in the past week than your alliance has managed in the entire exercise." "Yes," Maya agreed. "And every one of those victories has cost you resources you can't replace. Meanwhile, our operational capacity has increased by 30% over the same period." She activated the conference room's holographic display, showing detailed resource analysis for all remaining teams. "You began this phase of the exercise with superior assets, advanced individual capabilities, and proven tactical leadership. But look at your current trajectory." The data was undeniable. Team 3's resource expenditure curve showed consistent depletion despite their tactical successes. They were winning battles, but losing the war of attrition. "Temporary setbacks," Zareth insisted. "Once we complete our current objectives, we'll be in position to dominate the remaining competition." "Will you?" Maya highlighted specific operational data. "Your last 3 major victories required resource expenditures that exceeded the value of the objectives achieved. You're spending more to maintain your gains than those gains are worth strategically." Lyria leaned forward, her quantum processing capabilities finally catching up with the implications of Maya's analysis. "You're saying we're trapped in a cycle of declining returns." "I'm saying you're approaching this exercise like a traditional military campaign," Maya corrected, "where victory goes to the side with superior firepower and tactical execution. But this isn't a traditional military campaign." She modified the holographic display to show the exercise's underlying victory conditions. "The exercise continues until only one team maintains operational effectiveness. It's not about achieving specific objectives. It's about lasting longer than everyone else." "Endurance competition," Crixtel mused, his crystalline features reflecting the changing patterns of the display. Maya nodded. "And humans spent millions of years evolving to win endurance competitions against creatures that were bigger, stronger, and faster than we were." Zareth's scales had settled into patterns Maya recognized as intense thought. Despite his species' preference for direct confrontation, the Draknari were also pragmatic warriors who understood tactical reality when confronted with it. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked finally. Maya had prepared for this moment carefully. The term she offered had to be attractive enough to convince Team 3 to cooperate, while ensuring that the cooperation benefited the broader alliance more than it benefited Team 3 alone. "Integration into our operational framework," Maya explained. "Your team maintains autonomous tactical control over your assigned operations, but coordinates with alliance strategic planning to ensure sustainable resource utilization." She manipulated the display to show proposed operational zones. "You excel at high-value target operations. Our alliance excels at intelligence gathering, resource management, and defensive coordination. Combined operations would allow you to achieve more significant objectives while reducing the resource costs that are currently depleting your capabilities. And what prevents us from simply taking what we need from your alliance once we've recovered our operational capacity?" Zareth asked bluntly. Maya had expected this question. "Information asymmetry and operational integration," she replied. "Our intelligence networks have become essential to efficient operations in this exercise environment. Attacking us means losing access to intelligence that makes all other operations more expensive and less effective." More importantly, Veltar interjected from Maya's side, "Our operational methods have created sustainable resource generation. Betraying the alliance means returning to the same unsustainable operational patterns that brought you to this negotiation. Lyria's processing capabilities were clearly working through complex probability calculations. What are the specific terms of integration? Maya had structured the proposal to appeal to each species' natural strengths while creating interdependencies that made betrayal costly. Team 3 takes point on precision strike operations and defensive combat scenarios. Alliance intelligence networks provide targeting data and operational security. Alliance resource coordination ensures your operations have necessary support. Alliance diplomatic protocols manage relationships with remaining non-alliance teams. Diplomatic protocols? Crixtel asked. There are still 3 teams operating independently, Maya explained. Teams 4, 8, and 12. Each has capabilities that could threaten Alliance operations if they choose to coordinate against us. But each also has resource needs that Alliance cooperation could address. She brought up detailed analyses of the remaining independent teams. Team 4 specializes in electronic warfare and information systems. Team 8 focuses on mobility and rapid deployment. Team 12 emphasizes defensive operations and resource security. You're planning to absorb all remaining teams, Zareth realized. I'm planning to create conditions where cooperation is more profitable than competition for everyone involved, Maya corrected. The exercise's victory conditions reward the last team standing, but they don't specify that only one team can remain operational. If all remaining teams are integrated into a cooperative framework, technically we all remain operational. The implications of this strategy created a moment of stunned silence around the negotiation table. Maya had identified a potential loophole in the exercise parameters that could allow multiple teams to achieve victory simultaneously. Has this been attempted before? Lyria asked. Not successfully, Kethal replied from her position as tactical coordinator. Previous exercises have always resulted in direct elimination competition. But the parameters don't explicitly prohibit cooperative solutions. Zareth leaned back in his chair, his scales displaying patterns Maya had learned to associate with strategic recalculation. You're proposing to redefine victory from individual achievement to collective success. I'm proposing to achieve victory using the methods that allowed humans to become apex predators despite being individually weaker than most of our competitors, Maya said. Cooperation, persistence, and strategic thinking that prioritizes long-term success over short-term dominance. The negotiation continued for several hours as Team 3's leadership worked through the implications of Maya's proposal. The terms were complex, involving detailed coordination protocols, resource sharing agreements, and operational integration procedures. But underlying the complexity was a simple strategic principle: make cooperation more valuable than competition. By the end of the session, Team 3 had agreed to a trial integration period. They would coordinate with the Alliance for the next phase of operations while maintaining the right to withdraw if the arrangement proved unsatisfactory. As the meeting concluded, Maya found herself approached by Lyria, whose quantum processing capabilities had been analyzing not just the tactical implications of the agreement, but Maya's strategic thinking patterns. I've been studying your analytical methods, Lyria said, her multifaceted eyes reflecting complex light patterns. Your approach to strategic planning incorporates variables that quantum calculation systems don't naturally account for. Such as, Maya asked, emotional responses, cultural biases, irrational decision-making factors, Lyria explained. My calculations optimize for logical decision trees, but actual competitors don't always make logical decisions. Your strategies seem to account for illogical responses. Maya considered this observation. Humans learned to think like other species because we had to predict behavior that wasn't necessarily rational. Fear, pride, territorial instincts, these affect decision-making even when they're strategically disadvantageous. And you build these factors into your strategic planning? I build flexibility into strategic planning to account for the fact that nobody, including myself, will always make optimal decisions under pressure. As Team 3 integrated into the Alliance operational framework, Maya found herself coordinating the most complex military simulation in the Academy's history. 7 teams, representing dozens of species, operating under unified strategic coordination while maintaining their individual tactical autonomy. The results exceeded even Maya's optimistic projections. Alliance operations achieved efficiency levels that individual teams had never approached. Intelligence networks provided real-time tactical data across multiple star systems. Resource coordination ensured that no team faced critical shortages. Diplomatic coordination prevented destructive conflicts between teams with overlapping objectives. More importantly, the Alliance's approach began affecting the behavior of the 3 remaining independent teams. Instead of attacking Alliance operations directly, they began attempting to negotiate their own cooperation agreements. Team 4, the electronic warfare specialists, found themselves increasingly isolated as Alliance communication security made their specialized capabilities less relevant to overall strategic success. They were the first to request integration discussions. Team 8 discovered that their mobility advantages were less significant when Alliance coordination allowed for rapid resource redeployment across multiple systems simultaneously. They began exploring cooperation possibilities after several operations were outmaneuvered by Alliance strategic planning. Team 12, the defensive specialists, initially seemed most likely to remain independent due to their sustainable operational methods. But as Alliance operations expanded, they found themselves controlling increasingly irrelevant territory while the Alliance coordinated activities that shaped the strategic environment around them. We're approaching a point where all remaining teams are either integrated or requesting integration, Veltar reported during one of their daily strategy sessions. The exercise parameters may not have anticipated this scenario. Maya had been expecting this development. Time to find out what happens when persistence hunting achieves total strategic success. The answer came in the form of an unprecedented announcement from Exercise Control. Commander Thax himself appeared via holographic communication to address all remaining teams simultaneously. Cadets, Commander Thax began, his scaled features displaying what Maya had learned to recognize as Draknari expressions of profound surprise. The current exercise status requires clarification of victory conditions. He activated a display showing the overall tactical situation. Instead of the expected pattern of individual teams fighting for dominance, the display showed a single integrated operational framework coordinating activities across all assigned star systems. For the first time in the Strategic Command Assessment's history, we have achieved a scenario where multiple teams maintain full operational effectiveness while coordinating unified strategic objectives, Commander Thax announced. This requires adjudication of victory conditions that the exercise parameters did not anticipate. Maya felt her heart racing. Everything they had worked toward might be invalidated by technicalities in the exercise rules. After consultation with Academy leadership and exercise observers, the following determination has been made, Commander Thax continued. The exercise objective was to identify the strategic thinking capabilities that produce sustainable success in complex multi-species military operations. This objective has been achieved. He paused, allowing the implications to settle among the teams. The Strategic Command Assessment is hereby concluded with a determination of collective strategic success. All participating teams have demonstrated competencies that merit graduation and consideration for advanced military assignments. The communication ended, leaving hundreds of cadets across multiple simulated star systems trying to process what had just happened. Maya realized that they hadn't just won the exercise, they had redefined what victory could look like in complex strategic environments. Collective strategic success, Thorek repeated slowly. I don't think anyone expected that outcome when the exercise began. I don't think anyone except Maya even considered it as a possibility, Six corrected. Maya looked around at her teammates. the diverse group of beings who had come to trust human strategic thinking enough to redefine how galactic military operations could be conducted. 3 years ago, she had been the invisible human trying not to draw attention. Now she was the strategic coordinator for a multi-species alliance that had achieved something unprecedented in Academy history. What happens next? Kethal asked. Before Maya could respond, new communications began arriving from exercise control. But these weren't addressed to teams or individual cadets. They were recruitment offers from military commands throughout the galaxy, all requesting the services of specific individuals who had demonstrated unprecedented strategic capabilities. Maya's personal communication display showed 17 different recruitment offers, from the Terran Colonial Defense Force to the Galactic Peacekeeping Corps to military commands she had never heard of before. But the most significant communication came from Commander Thax personally. Cadet Shun, your strategic integration capabilities have created interest at the highest levels of Galactic Military Command. Please report for advanced career counseling at your earliest convenience. Maya realized that her battle name was about to explode across every channel in ways she could never have anticipated. The silent human cadet who had spent 3 years trying to blend in was about to become the strategic coordinator whose thinking had redefined multi-species military cooperation. The persistence hunt was ending, but the real adventure was just beginning. 6 months after the conclusion of the Strategic Command Assessment, Maya found herself standing in the observation deck of the Starship Persistence, watching as a mixed fleet of vessels from a dozen different species maneuvered through complex formation exercises. The ship itself was a testament to the new approaches that had emerged from her Academy success, designed not for any single species' optimal configuration, but for maximum adaptability and multi-species coordination. The irony of commanding a vessel named after humanity's greatest evolutionary advantage was not lost on her. When the Galactic Defense Coordination Council had offered her command of the first Integrated Strategic Operations Unit, they had insisted she choose the ship's name. Maya had selected Persistence, both as a reminder of human capabilities and as a promise of the approach her unit would bring to galactic security challenges. Commander Chun came the voice of her tactical coordinator, Lieutenant Veltar, now bearing the rank insignia of the Galactic Defense Forces. The fleet has completed formation exercises. All units report readiness for the operational briefing. Maya turned from the viewport to face the bridge crew that had become as familiar as family over the past months. Veltar occupied the tactical coordination station, her Nexary precision and adaptability making her invaluable for coordinating diverse fleet capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Thorek had accepted the position of Heavy Operations Specialist, his Gorvani combat experience essential for situations requiring direct engagement. Chief Zix managed intelligence operations, her Skrix analytical capabilities enhanced by access to the most advanced information networks in known space. Even Kethal had joined the unit as strategic planning advisor, her academy instructor experience providing crucial insight into long-term operational development. The team that had redefined military thinking at Nexus Prime was now applying those concepts to real-world galactic security operations. All stations report ready for briefing, Maya announced as she took her position at the Central Command Station. The bridge design reflected the same adaptive thinking that had guided her academy strategies. Flexible configurations that could be optimized for different operational requirements and species needs. The operational briefing that followed outlined their most significant mission to date. For the past 3 months, a region known as the Disputed Sectors have been experiencing escalating conflicts between multiple species over resource rights and territorial claims. Traditional diplomatic solutions had failed, and conventional military interventions had only escalated the violence. The Galactic Council had requested the Integrated Strategic Operations Unit to develop sustainable solutions that could address the underlying causes of conflict rather than simply suppressing the immediate violence. It was exactly the kind of complex, multi-species challenge that Maya's strategic thinking had evolved to handle. Intelligence assessment, Maya called out as the briefing began. Chief Zix activated the holographic display showing the disputed sectors. 7 different species claiming overlapping territorial rights to 3-star systems. Resource extraction conflicts on 14 different worlds. Established military positions by all parties, with entrenched defensive preparations suggesting long-term conflict expectations. Current diplomatic status? Maya asked. Lieutenant Veltar provided the update. All previous negotiation attempts have focused on territorial division or resource allocation. None have addressed the underlying strategic concerns that make continued conflict attractive to all parties. Maya studied the tactical display with eyes that had learned to see strategic patterns invisible to conventional military thinking. The disputed sector's conflict exhibited all the characteristics that made traditional solutions ineffective. Multiple parties with legitimate grievances, resource limitations that made compromise seem impossible, and strategic positions that made any single party's victory devastating for all others. Assessment. This is not a military conflict, Maya announced, surprising several bridge officers. This is a coordination failure. Lieutenant Commander Thorek's massive form shifted slightly in his specially designed chair. Explain. Look at the resource distribution data, Maya said, highlighting specific areas of the tactical display. The total available resources in the disputed sectors could sustainably support all 7 species' development needs. But the current territorial claim structure makes efficient resource extraction impossible for anyone. She modified the display to show resource extraction efficiency under current territorial arrangements versus optimal distribution patterns. Each species is claiming territory based on maximizing their individual access to specific resources. But individual optimization creates systemic inefficiency that makes the conflict economically unsustainable for everyone. Chief Zix's mandibles clicked in recognition. They're trapped in a competitive framework that prevents anyone from achieving their actual objectives. Exactly, Maya agreed. And traditional diplomatic solutions keep trying to find ways to divide the existing framework more fairly rather than creating a new framework that serves everyone better. Lieutenant Veltar leaned forward with interest. You're proposing to restructure the entire territorial and resource management approach. I'm proposing to apply the same strategic thinking that worked at the Academy, Maya corrected. Make cooperation more profitable than competition by creating frameworks that automatically punish destructive behavior while rewarding sustainable collaboration. The solution Maya developed over the following days built on lessons learned from coordinating multi-species academy teams. Instead of trying to negotiate territorial boundaries, she proposed creating cooperative resource extraction frameworks that would benefit all parties more than individual territorial control. The key insight was recognizing that each species had different resource priorities and extraction capabilities. What looked like competition for limited resources was actually an opportunity for specialization and exchange that could increase total resource yield for everyone. Species A has optimal extraction capabilities for mineral resources, but limited biological processing technology, Maya explained during a strategy session with her senior staff. Species B has advanced biological processing, but inefficient mineral extraction methods. Instead of fighting each other for territory that contains both resources, they could coordinate specialized operations that yield more of both resources than either could achieve individually. And what ensures they maintain cooperation instead of trying to monopolize the increased yields? Lieutenant Commander Thorek asked. Maya activated a display showing the proposed operational structure, interdependence, and distributed control. Each species maintains specialized capabilities that the others need, but no species controls enough of the process to succeed independently. Betrayal means losing access to capabilities that make their own operations profitable. Chief Zix studied the proposal carefully. This is ecosystem thinking applied to interspecies resource management. This is persistence hunting applied to diplomatic conflict resolution, Maya corrected. making the cost of continued fighting higher than the benefit of cooperation, while ensuring that cooperation produces results that none of the parties could achieve alone. Implementation of the proposal required 3 months of careful negotiation, technological coordination, and operational integration. Maya's units served not as military enforcers, but as strategic facilitators, helping each species understand how cooperative frameworks could serve their individual interests better than continued conflict. The breakthrough came when Maya convinced the first 2 species to attempt a limited cooperative extraction operation. The results exceeded both parties' projections, producing resource yields 40% higher than either could achieve independently, while reducing operational costs by 25%. Word of the success spread rapidly through the disputed sectors. Within weeks, other species were requesting inclusion in cooperative frameworks. Within 2 months, all 7 species had agreed to integrated resource management protocols that transformed the region from a conflict zone into the galaxy's most efficient multi-species economic cooperation zone. The success in the disputed sectors established Maya's reputation throughout galactic military and diplomatic communities. Requests for integrated strategic operations unit consultation began arriving from across known space, each presenting complex challenges that traditional military or diplomatic approaches had failed to resolve. Maya found herself traveling to conflict zones, resource disputes, territorial disagreements, and coordination failures throughout the galaxy. Each mission taught her more about applying human strategic thinking to challenges that had previously seemed impossible to resolve. The pattern was consistent. Conflicts that looked like competition for limited resources were usually coordination failures that could be resolved by creating frameworks for sustainable cooperation. Military thinking that focused on defeating enemies was less effective than strategic thinking that focused on making cooperation more profitable than conflict. Commander, Lieutenant Veltar announced during one of their regular operational reviews, "We've received a priority communication from Galactic Defense Command." Maya accepted the secure transmission from Admiral Kethvar, the Volpine officer who had been her xenobiology professor years earlier, and now served as one of the senior strategic coordinators for galactic military operations. "Commander Chin," Admiral Kethvar began, his amber eyes reflecting the same intelligence that had made him an effective teacher. "Your unit's success has created interest at the highest levels of galactic governance. The Council of Species has requested a formal presentation on strategic coordination methodologies." Maya felt a familiar mixture of pride and nervousness. The Council of Species represented every major civilization in known space, the ultimate diplomatic and strategic authority for galactic affairs. A formal presentation to the Council would mean explaining human strategic thinking to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "What specific topics are they interested in?" Maya asked. "Everything," Admiral Kethvar replied. "Your approaches to conflict resolution, resource coordination, multi-species military integration, and strategic planning methodologies. They want to understand whether human strategic thinking represents capabilities that could be applied to galactic governance challenges." The transmission ended with arrangements for Maya to travel to the galactic capital for the council presentation. As she prepared for what might be the most important briefing of her career, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her from invisible academy cadet to strategic advisor to the galaxy's most powerful institutions. 3 years earlier, she had been the silent human trying not to draw attention in Commander Thax's tactical theory class. Now she was preparing to explain to the Council of Species how human persistence hunting could be applied to challenges of galactic governance. The presentation took place in the council chambers, a vast space designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of different species simultaneously. Maya stood at the central podium, surrounded by beings whose civilizations had shaped galactic history for millennia, explaining concepts that had evolved in the minds of primitive humans tracking prey across African savannas. Human strategic thinking evolved under unique pressures, Maya explained to an audience that included some of the most powerful beings in known space. We developed persistence hunting not because we were the strongest or fastest predators, but because we were the only predators willing to continue pursuit when all others gave up. She activated holographic displays, showing examples from her unit's recent operations. This evolutionary background created strategic thinking patterns that prioritize sustainability over immediate dominance, cooperation over individual competition, and adaptive flexibility over optimal specialization. Council Speaker Voxhai, an ancient crystalline whose species had achieved interstellar travel when humans were still discovering fire, leaned forward with interest that was visible in the shifting patterns of his crystalline structure. You suggest that human strategic capabilities represent evolutionary solutions to challenges that other species have not faced, Voxhai observed, his communication patterns creating harmonic frequencies that resonated through the chamber. I suggest that human strategic capabilities complement the specialized advantages that other species have evolved, Maya replied. We're not better strategists than Zephyrians, or better fighters than Krillians, or better pilots than Nexari. But we're specialists in coordination, adaptation, and persistence, capabilities that become more valuable as the challenges become more complex. Council member Zuratha, representing the warrior clans of the Draknari hegemony, activated her communication protocols. Your claims require validation. Human strategic thinking may work for limited scenarios, but galactic governance requires capabilities proven over centuries of experience. Maya had expected this challenge. I propose a test case. Select any ongoing galactic challenge that traditional approaches have failed to resolve. Allow my unit to apply human strategic thinking to develop alternative approaches. Evaluate the results against current methods. The murmur that ran through the council chambers created a sound like a symphony of alien languages. Maya had just offered to stake her reputation and her species' credibility on solving a problem that the galaxy's most experienced leaders had been unable to address. Council Speaker Voxhai's crystalline structure shifted into patterns Maya had learned to recognize as intense consideration. Such a test would require careful selection of appropriate challenges and clear evaluation criteria. I understand the risks, Maya replied, but human strategic thinking is based on the assumption that any problem can be solved if you're willing to keep trying new approaches until something works. The council session continued for several hours as representatives debated the implications of Maya's proposal. Some argued that human strategic thinking was too limited by the species' short lifespan and recent entry into galactic civilization to address challenges that had persisted for millennia. Others suggested that fresh perspectives might indeed be valuable for problems that traditional approaches had failed to solve. The final decision came from an unexpected source. Elder Thexanael, the most senior representative in council history, activated communication protocols that have been silent for decades. In my tenure, I have observed many claims of revolutionary strategic thinking. Elder Thexanael's ancient voice resonated through translation systems that converted his species' bioelectric patterns into understandable communication. Most proved to be variations on existing approaches. But occasionally, genuine innovation emerges from sources that established thinking would not predict. His attention focused on Maya with the intensity of someone who had watched civilizations rise and fall across galactic history. Young human, your species has achieved more in 3 standard years than most achieve in 3 centuries of galactic participation. This suggests capabilities that merit serious evaluation. Elder Thexanael paused, allowing his words to impact the assembled representatives. I propose we select the Omega Paradox as the test case for human strategic thinking. The chamber fell silent. Maya had never heard of the Omega Paradox, but the reaction from every council representative suggested it was a challenge of unprecedented difficulty. Council Speaker Voxhai's crystalline structure displayed patterns Maya recognized as shock. Elder Thexanael, the Omega Paradox has resisted resolution for over 2,000 standard years. It represents our greatest failure in galactic governance. Precisely. Elder Thexanel replied. If human strategic thinking can contribute to galactic governance, it should be tested against our most intractable challenge. As the council session concluded with formal approval for Maya's unit to study the Omega Paradox, she realized that her battle name was about to explode across every channel in the galaxy for reasons she could never have anticipated. The silent cadet from the Academy was now responsible for solving a problem that had challenged galactic civilization for 2 millennia. Walking from the council chambers toward the briefing facilities where she would learn about the Omega Paradox, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 3 years ago, she had been trying to survive at an academy where she didn't belong. Now she was humanity's representative in the galaxy's most important strategic challenge. The persistence hunt that had begun in Commander Thax's classroom was entering its final phase. Soon, the galaxy would discover what happened when human strategic thinking was applied to challenges that had defined the limits of civilizational capability. Maya Chun, the human who had learned to turn obstacles into advantages, was about to find out whether persistence hunting could work on a scale that encompassed the entire known galaxy. The real test of human strategic thinking was just beginning. As she entered the briefing facility to learn about humanity's greatest challenge, Maya carried with her the confidence that had sustained her species through millions of years of evolution. Any problem can be solved if you're willing to keep trying new approaches until something works. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had never accepted that anything was impossible,